Well, as you all know, I'm reaching the final stages of my Smith spreader. I have my side lettering all done, but it looks like that second picture that was sent to me by you folks, that there's also a black and inner yellow stripe that goes on this panel and this panel as well. And then on the wheels, it looks like the spokes have a little more stripe as well. It seems to indicate that there's a black band in the spokes in this area somewhere, and possibly it's a little more difficult to tell if there was a stripe inside, but at least there was a black band here, and it looks like this stripe that I have got about 1/4 inch should actually be closer to 1/2 inch, the same width as I have on my side panels. So I'm going to make that a little wider as well. And that picture also indicates that there's a heavy black line stripe around the front axle and maybe some type of a flowery design. Not totally sure on that yet, possibly even on these bolsters. So while this is still waiting to be completed so that I can put it in the store across the street, at least that's what I'm thinking right now, part of my push is to get that store across the street finished. I'm still working on that ceiling and putting the tin up. So I brought the Piedmont wagon in last week, and it needs to be disassembled so it can go into the paint room to start the painting process. But I have the paint room plugged up, and that's another story. And I think I have indicated in the past about this project. I'm not really quite sure. But this other project is my 48 flat fender Willys Jeep. And it's sitting here disassembled, and I'll tell you the story behind all this. Well, I picked up this Jeep probably close to 30 years ago, maybe 28, 30 years ago, at a farm sale. And it was not running. It had a significant amount of body damage to it on the left rear corner specifically. But I have a love affair with these flat fender Jeeps. The first flat fender that I was involved with in driving belonged to my oldest sister, and I think it was at that time who was to become her husband, Bill. And they had, I think it was also a 48, it was red. Her first husband died, and she kept this Jeep for a number of years, and that Jeep eventually is now in possession by my brother. He is the youngest of us 6. He has that Jeep yet still today. But I first remember driving that around and taking it deer hunting when I was probably 12, 13. That's kind of in my memory somewhere. But that began my fascination with Jeeps. Well, the years passed by, and I remember walking down, I think it was Central Avenue in Great Falls. I grew up close to Great Falls. And I noticed a yellow flat fender Jeep with a for sale sign in it. And that for sale sign just had my name written all over it. So I inquired about it, and I ended up buying that Jeep. And this would have been 9th, 10th grade maybe. I might have been 14, 15, 16, maybe in that area, where I bought my first Jeep. And you know, a lot of these are known as a CJ2A. Well, that 46 CJ2A was the very first year that Willys put out a civilian Jeep. That's the CJ, the CJ2A. So that was the first time in the transition that it went from a military vehicle to a civilian vehicle. So I owned at that time a 46 CJ2A. I was in hog heaven. So that CJ came completely apart. I pulled the tub off, which is referring to the whole body. I completely stripped it down, repainted it, rebuilt what I had to do. I wasn't much of a welder, if anything at all. My father helped me as we turned it upside down to re-weld some of the framework underneath. And if you have ever worked on these CJs, they are notorious for rusting out because there's wood inside this framework and it tends to collect moisture and rust them out. So we rebuilt this in my probably junior, senior year in high school. The only thing I didn't do on that Jeep was the motor. It ran actually pretty well, sort of. It had its personality like all these CJs do. Well, by the time I headed to college, and I went to Bozeman for 4 years, but the stipulation of my father was that when you went to college that first year, you didn't need a vehicle because he knew good and well you'd just be doing more playing than you were studying. So my Jeep had to stay home. That was my freshman year, and that was the year I met to be my wife, Diane. Well, as we got to know each other a little better, one thing that I became familiar with was Diane was all about family reunions. Her family was just raised that way, so that was a common ordeal. And part of being associated and getting to know Diane was you went to family reunions. Well, at one particular family reunion, which was close to where we live here, we're in Joliet, another 16 miles down the road is a little town called Bridger. Well, she had family relation in Bridger. So I kind of tagged along to this family reunion. Well, the subject of a Jeep came up, a 46 yellow CJ2A. Well, come to find out that that Jeep that I had bought and restored was a Jeep that my wife Diane learned to drive with on the farm when she was so small she couldn't reach the pedals. So her dad would pull out the throttle, put it in gear, and send her home. And when she got home, she knew she just had to turn the key off. So as the story began to unfold and some of these pieces started to get put together, Diane's mother was a sister to the woman that was the wife of the man who was the father to the daughter that I bought the Jeep from. And this family, my parents were acquainted with through Toastmasters, which is speaking organization, and dog kennel clubs. They were both into teaching dog obedience through this kennel club. So we knew this family, unknown to me that they were related now to my wife's family, but it ended up being that the two wives were sisters, similar to Rick Bischoff, who does the carriage lamps, and my wife. They are sisters, and that was the relationship here. So I ended up, totally unknowing, buying that Jeep that belonged to this family that was related, and loaned the Jeep to my wife's parents for a farm vehicle that they could use during harvest to run back and forth to the field. So, as it is, I owned the Jeep that my wife learned to drive in. How about that? Well, like I say, all these CJs, including this one, have their own personalities. Well, there were 4 of us that went hunting one year in my Jeep. I didn't have any top on it, just had the 2 front seats, and they had to sit in the back. I didn't have the bench seat in that Jeep. So 4 of us went hunting one winter day. We went up to the top of what's known as Jackson Creek, and we hunted all day, and it was snowing, and I don't remember how deep it was, but it was wintertime. And the end of the day came around, and we all came back to my Jeep, and that old girl would not start. And I didn't have it parked in a position where we could have pushed it downhill to get it kick-started. We were stuck, and daylight was fading fast. We ended up walking out because this Jeep wouldn't start for 6 miles that night. It left us stranded. And I stewed and fermented about that old girl that I left there up on the mountain How am I going to get that thing down? It just wouldn't start. Well, after stewing about it all night, I did find a ride back up to that mountaintop. I don't remember who it was, but somebody gave me a ride back up there. And I was kind of trying to figure out, how am I going to get this old girl to run? I got in it, pushed the starter button, and it fired right up. Not a hesitation, not a bit. You old rascal, anyway. So I drive this old girl home. But it was not the first time this old girl had left me stranded, so, it really wasn't a deal breaker. I like Jeeps, that's just part of the picture of having a Jeep. Well, through the process of maybe my junior year, senior year, I don't remember exactly, probably my senior year, I began to be interested in search and rescue. And the idea of a Jeep to go back into rugged country for that purpose kind of had an attraction to me. So that summer between my junior and senior year, I had a man contact me about buying that Jeep. Well, I had an eye on a 56 Jeep, and it had a 292 V8 in it. And I thought, oh, bigger and better and more powerful and all that kind of stuff. So I sold the 46 CJ2A, and I bought this 56. I rebuilt the motor and was playing with it. I took it to a motorcycle hill climb area that was close to us. It was in the spring, it was kind of wet. My brother was with me, and we were going to the top of this one hill climb hill, and it spun out and the front end slid off to the side. And before we knew it, we were side over side over side. We rolled that thing 6 times to where it finally landed on its feet and rolled to the bottom of the hill. So I say it rolled 6 times like I was sitting there counting it. I wasn't, obviously. It was too much of a wreck happening at the time. But there were some other folks across the draw on another hillside that was watching this whole thing, and they were the ones doing the counting. And they said somehow that I threw my brother out, and I got out, and they watched this roll 6 times on the bottom. However, that all happened, but that was their story of their vantage point of watching this all come apart. Well, it pretty well did a number on that Jeep, and it did a number on my head. Both of us were fine. We did go to the hospital and get checked out, and there was nothing wrong. Everything was fine. But it played with me mentally. I relived that wreck for probably a year after that. Wake up in the middle of the night and I'd be in the middle of that happening, and it played games with my head. So I didn't have a Jeep for a number of years after that. So now we're going to fast forward, let me think here, maybe another 15 years, and we're married and we have 3 children. And we're leasing a place, and I'm running 35 cows, and we've got some sows that we're farrowing and raising some chickens, and there's a fair amount of fence that I need to fix. So I started looking at 4-wheelers just to navigate some of the draws and coulees that we had to run fence through. And they were pretty expensive. And I thought, if I just had a Jeep, I could do this in style. And that's when I started to look, and that's when I found this Jeep here at a farm auction. And I bought it, pulled some dents out, got the thing to run actually pretty well. I did some work on the mechanics of it to where it ran well, but it always looked pretty tough. But my 3 children learned to drive in this Jeep. And our oldest, especially Brett, he loved to drive this to town to school. We were 8 miles out of town. So they'd drive this to town and back, taking it to school. And it was kind of the cat's meow for them at that time. Well, they all graduated and left, like kids do. And this became just kind of my own personal Jeep again, and I enjoyed driving it, always have, probably always will. Well, 2014, 15, 16 came up, and when I throw those numbers out, you know good and well what I'm talking about. The Borax project came to the surface, and I focused pretty hard, pretty fast in 2016 to get those wagons done. We took the wagons to the Rose Parade January 2nd of 2017, and we kind of lounged around a little bit, and I didn't get back till mid-January in there somewhere. But when I stepped back into this shop, I was pretty burnt out. Mentally, physically, I went through a period that I was sick for about a month. It had just taken its toll on me, and I could not, just being up front, I could not stomach looking at another wagon or fixing another wheel. I had burnt myself out trying to get that project done. So in the midst of that, where I was at physically and mentally, knowing I needed to be in the shop, but I couldn't really stomach it at that time, I need to fix my Jeep. At that time, I had been buying pieces and parts, body parts, motor parts, all this time. I've been accumulating all of these parts and just stashing them away, knowing that somewhere in the future, I was going to rebuild this old girl. And at that time, January, February 2017, I took apart my Jeep. I took this tub off, took fenders off. I did some sandblasting. The undercarriage chassis is in storage. The motor is at a friend's house he gets things done about as fast as I do sometimes, which isn't very fast. He's going to rebuild the motor, but this has been in my paint room, in this tire setting room. I had to put it outside under tarp for a while. Then I brought it back in and put it in my paint room. Well, now when I have the Piedmont back in here that I need to get it painted, this needs to come out. And I've been kind of mulling around in my head that I want to do this as my after-work project this winter. I'd like to get this put back together. So I rolled it out. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do this yet. I'm going to gather up all the parts that I've been accumulating over a number of years, get them put aside. But you notice that I've been moving this camera around as I'm telling you the story of my Jeep, different Jeeps. Well, this is to give you a picture of what a basket case that I have here. Fenders are off, tank is out, grill is off, motor's gone. Hood's somewhere hiding in here. I have rust, I have dents, I have a mess here ahead of me. But I want to fix this Jeep, and I think it's going to be part of my winter project. This Piedmont wagon isn't going to take me real long to paint and letter and stripe it. But this Jeep is going to be kind of a winter project. And I think it's going to be mainly my Tuesday after work project. It had a plate over this side panel here that was covering up a good part of this rust, so I've got to deal with that. This whole left rear fender was totally caved in, and I did pull most of it out, but you can see it's kind of pretty tough, so I think I'm going to replace this. We've got some pretty good rust in here. Underneath all this is pretty bad. There was a heavy piece of iron that was welded across the back here. I cut it off. This bed is bad. We're going to see what I can do with that. I did run these front fenders through the sandblaster, but it's been in storage now for 7 years, and it has had some rain on it, and it's got some surface rust, so I'm going to have to re-sandblast those again. Well, this is just to kind of introduce you to my serious case of Jeep fever. I've loved Jeeps, like I say, probably since I was an early teenager. Always had a Jeep around at some time or another. When I tore this down here a couple years ago, I was kind of bemoaning that I'm missing my Jeep, and that's why I now have that red Jeep that you have seen me drive around on different occasions. It's to satisfy this need to have a Jeep in my life. And it's an older Jeep, it's a 94. It's the one that a lot of people don't like because it has square headlights in it. But when you have Jeep fever as bad as I am, that's really a minor deal. So part of the goal is to get this out in a little more daylight, a little bit of room to work around. And see where we start. Well, when you're going to run a marathon, it starts with the first step of the race, huh? You know, most of the time when you start to get sick and you take your temperature and you find out you have a fever, common thing is to go to the doctor and he'll prescribe you a pill or a shot or something to help you get over that fever. But one thing I've noticed, there's some things that you get that cause a fever that no doctor can cure. Whether it's horse fever or farming fever or Jeep fever, I've never found a pill yet other than another Jeep to kind of help satisfy that Jeep fever. That's kind of where I'm at, and I hope you understand and maybe come along on the journey of putting this old girl back together again. Appreciate you coming along. Thanks for watching.